So Ilia Topuria is finally a superstar, and it is now up to Paddy Pimblett to catch up. And what do I mean by this? Well, if you're looking at the thumbnail, you know exactly what I mean when Paddy said back in 2021 that he was going to rise to the top a whole lot quicker than Ilia Topuria. Now, for those of you that don't understand the context, these two guys have been having beef back when UFC London had a show and they had a fight in a hotel lobby in which I believe it was Paddy that threw a hand sanitizer at Ilia Topuria, and then hence the name, Mr. Hand Sanitizer. That's what he calls him, Mr. Hand Sanitizer. Well, now fast forward to 2024, Ilia Topuria is now getting the rub from Real Madrid in the same similar fashion that Paddy Pimblett gets the rub from Liverpool FC. Two famous football clubs that, well, in light of it, I mean, it does help. It does help having that type of rub from these big organizations. Now, the only problem is that Paddy Pimblett did not hold up his end of the bargain. They're not fast tracking him. They're slowly trying to build him up. And when you look at him fight somebody like Jared Gordon, I believe Jared Gordon was supposed to be an easy out for Paddy Pimblett. Now, from what I understand, I don't think Jared Gordon is even a top 15 or a top 10 at the time that he fought him. But nonetheless, it was supposed to be a layup for Paddy Pimblett, in which he did great, obviously, because he won, but he didn't do enough to convince the public that he was worthy of this attention. Whereas with Ilia Topuria, he puts himself out there with full confidence, predicting exactly what he's going to do, very similar to how Conor McGregor rose to the top in 2015, just right before he fought Jose Aldo, and just right before he had fought Chad Mendes. He constantly called his shots. Most of them happened, most of them didn't, but most of them were quite intriguing in a way where, you know what? Why is this guy so confident? Let's find out what it is that drives this guy to believe in himself in the way that he really does. Because, look, I've told you guys from the post-fight show for UFC 298 and in the live stream that I did, I urge you guys to check that out, because not only did I break down the fights in the prelims while I was watching a live card, but I was also breaking down the fights even after the live stream, going over why Ilia Topuria really deserved his flowers after displaying to the world what true confidence can bring. Well, now that he's champion, as I've said earlier in the content, he's now getting the rub from Real Madrid. Now, why is this important? Well, for one, not only do I think that it's going to lead him into a blockbuster fight with Paddy Pimblett, that is, if Paddy Pimblett holds his end of the bargain and perhaps becomes a UFC champion, or at the very least, an even bigger star to where he doesn't have to win championships or rankings, just like Nate Diaz. He gets all the big fights against all the former and current champions and future champions. And he's not ranked, doesn't fight for titles or anything like that. If you want to include the BMF fight or the BMF title, but you've seen how that went. So, in light of that, here's something you guys have to understand. Ilia Topuria is about to become a way bigger star than Conor McGregor. Do you have any idea how many followers Real Madrid has on their page? And I urge you guys to take a look at the numbers on that, because that's going to give you an indication of the global reach that Ilia Topuria is going to have, not just within his own country of Spain, but obviously around the world. Now, for those of you that don't know, soccer is an extremely popular sport. And as a result of that, well, not only are they garnering attention from Spain, but they are also garnering the same attention around the world because, let's face it, you don't have to live in Madrid to be a real Madrid fan. That's just how soccer is. There's a lot of people that are fans of particular teams, and quite frankly, they don't live in these cities. And that's completely all right. But that is the reason why Ilia Topuria is going to have the reach that he has. He's going to garner the attention of many people around the world, and not only that, bring a new set of eyeballs to the sport. I'm going to tell you something. In all the years that I've researched Spanish sports, their biggest stars have always been soccer guys, never boxing guys, absolutely never MMA guys, maybe some tennis guys, but never MMA people. And this is very important to understand, because not only is Ilia Topuria going to become a bigger star in Spain, but as a result, he's going to attract the attention of Spanish sports fans and get into MMA. And perhaps somewhere down the line, you're going to see an influx of Spanish fighters coming out inspired by Ilia Topuria. So here we are, a man who has surpassed Paddy Pimblett. I gotta tell you, I'm quite shocked at this, but at the same time I'm not, because I've always known Paddy to be the bigger star, or at least way before Ilia Topuria won the world title or leading up to anywhere close to that. Obviously, Paddy had a great following. Paddy was offered to join the UFC as young as 19 or 21 years old and refused it because he felt that staying in the regional scenes of Cage Warriors and with fighting within England was going to help him become a better fighter at the world stage, especially in the UFC. So he did exactly just that. Now that he's in the UFC, he still needs layup fights. He still needs easier matchups. And he's taken on older guys like Tony Ferguson, which, by the way, is probably the biggest win of his career. But even him, he proclaimed to Michael Chandler backstage after that fight and said to him, "Man, I really wanted to finish this guy just like you did, but I wasn't able to." Well, quite frankly, because you're not at the level of Michael Chandler. And unfortunately, you're also not at the level of Ilia Topuria, your former or current rival. And unfortunately, I don't think you can even rival anything that he does right now. Now, prove me wrong, because I got to tell you guys, I told you from a video that I did a couple of months ago that Ilia Topuria versus Paddy Pimblett is going to be the next Conor McGregor versus Nate Diaz rivalry. If you guys remember anything about Nate Diaz and Conor McGregor's rivalry, it started based on the fact that Conor McGregor was trying to shoot for a double championship, which at the time was held by Rafael dos Anjos. And obviously, Rafael dos Anjos fell out of that fight, and in came Nate Diaz as a replacement after he had just fought Michael Johnson a couple of weeks prior. And then within that same contest where he defeats Michael Johnson, he gets on the mic and says to Conor McGregor, "You've taken everything I've worked for," and I'm going to explain to you exactly what he means by that. What does Nate Diaz mean when he says, "You've taken everything that I've worked for"? And I'm going to show you how this relates to Paddy Pimblett and Ilia Topuria. Well, here it goes. When Conor McGregor came into the UFC, he was a trash talker. He was brash. Not only that, he was also very, very gangster in his persona. Just like Nate Diaz, who, by the way, comes from a very gangster place. Dublin, it's the same thing. You take a look at the crime chronicles of the Kinahan family and the Irish mob and all the other Irish gangs that are involved in that drug trade that they have going on there. It's a pretty gangster place. Probably a whole lot more than Stockton, if not in the same level, because obviously Stockton is #1 in the murder rate of California at the current moment of time. So this is exactly what Nate Diaz means when he says that you've taken everything I've worked for. You took on a gangster persona that I brought into the UFC, that I brought into the MMA game, because prior to Nate Diaz and Conor McGregor, this sport honestly looked like a bunch of emo skater kids from Southern California in Ocean County. That's really the best way to describe the culture of MMA prior to Conor McGregor and Nate Diaz coming in. Now, here's the thing with Ilia Topuria and Ilia Topuria and Paddy Pimblett. He hasn't taken anything from him whatsoever. So as a result of that, it is Ilia Topuria that has surpassed Nate Diaz. And as a result, it is time for Nate Diaz to catch up. Because not Nate Diaz. It is time for Paddy Pimblett to catch up. Because he's got a big money fight ahead of him, and he needs to go at it and get it as soon as possible. Because right now, Ilia Topuria is on a hot streak. He's got Real Madrid backing him up. As for Paddy Pimblett, he has Barstool, $1 million deal with Barstool where he talks about soccer because he's a Liverpool FC fan, and Paddy has never played soccer a day in his life, at least not in an organized fashion, not in the way that he put his life and his effort into MMA. But nonetheless, he needs to get up there because time is ticking, and Ilia Topuria has already passed them. So don't let this pass you by. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I hope that you guys enjoy the content. I will be back with more in the future, and that is my 12 minutes.